Welcome to Hack the Real Size podcast with Heather, Ashley, and myself, Keira, where we like to explore people from the entertainment industry's individual journeys with a little bit of cheeky banter. And today we are very, very, very excited to welcome Mr. Harry McEntire. So Harry has worked with the Royal Shakespeare Company. He has been on stage and screen and done lots and lots of UK productions like Episodes, Eric and Ernie, and our favourite, The Last Kingdom. So thank you very, very, very much for coming on today, Harry. How are you doing?
I'm very good. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And Harry is one of the coaches at the actors community, and he is a phenomenal coach. So if anyone out there is looking at practicing self-tapes or want one-to-one tuition or anything, head over to theactorscommunity.org because he will be on there and he will be more than happy to share his knowledge because he's great. And you can slip me a $5 afterwards for promotion.
I will. That was slick.
I know.
That's why she's so good at it.
So I will start with my little section, which tends to be a little bit of icebreaker questions, some silly things to get to know you better. I mean, we know you're hilarious anyway, but we want all our podcast listeners to see the side of you that we've seen. And then who's taking the middle section?
Me.
Actually taking the middle section, and then Heather will round it all off. Okay?
Super.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
And you can pass on any of them you want.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. I'm now nervous. I was feeling really chill, and as soon as you've said you might not want to answer all these questions, now I'm terrified.
They're fine. I promise I don't go intrusive. I promise. Mine are just silly. Okay. So, what is the worst gift you have ever received?
This is the thing. My mum will find this because my mum claims not to Google me, and then she'll say there was this lovely thing that came up on this really obscure website. So, okay, the worst gift. It wasn't even a bad gift, Mum, but what it was I used to play the piano, and it was my 13th birthday, and as my main and maybe only present, I got a metronome for my piano practice. I had not asked for a metronome, and I hated practicing the piano. And so, yeah, my main present was something that I would just set and it would go tick, 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 and keep me in time while I did scales, which was, probably the least exciting thing you can give a 13-year-old boy. Yeah, it was a bleak year.
Oh, better than a lump of coal, though, wouldn't it?
Just. Yeah.
Better than the hang on, let me see if he's if he's around. My husband once bought me plastic hubcaps for my Micra for my birthday or Valentine's Day or Christmas or something. He was like, but you said you wanted hubcaps. I was like, yeah, but that's a damn present. Like, that's taking up some of the present area.
I was quite embarrassed this Christmas because my wife had said something about like, oh, it would be nice to have a wireless speaker. So I was like, great, I'll get her a wireless speaker. And she opened her speaker and was like, oh, that's really nice. You remember you got me a wireless speaker last Christmas? So I got her, and I'm really good at presents normally, and I got the same present 2 Christmases in a row. So I was super embarrassed and had some art commissioned.
Feel better than plastic hubcaps.
I made, it's not as bad as plastic hubcaps, but I tried to make up for it.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's the thought that counts.
I did think about it though. It's worse that I thought about it. I think that makes it worse that I thought about it and it never clicked. Anyway.
Oh well. If you could be, I mean, obviously not right now because you're exactly where you want to be, but if you could be anywhere in the world right now, apart from here, where would it be? Where would you be? Sorry.
Oh, where would I be?
And it can be in the past too, right?
Yeah, if we're going current crazy state of the world free, I would go to Transmitter Park in Greenpoint in Brooklyn. My wife and I went there for her 30th, and we were meant to go there last year for my 30th, and we were going to be there over the big Halloween parade. And there's a pizzeria called Paulie G's, which is the best pizza I've ever had. And you can go out and sit in Transmitter Park and look over Manhattan. And when we went to New York, we both really, really wanted to go. And because we stayed in Brooklyn rather than in Manhattan, every night you'd kind of look at the sunset over the city and be like, oh my God, that's New York. Like it's the most amazing thing. And so it never became really overwhelming. It was just brilliant. And we used to just sit on the rocks and like eat pizza. And yeah, that's where I'd like to be.
Is there room for one more? 3 more? That
Sure,
sounds
why not? Please, come
You had me at pizza.
on.
What was the last song you listened to on your playlist?
Oh, that's a really good question. Oh my gosh. I want to know.
That's why I asked the tough questions, guys.
Oh, that really is good because it's So Far Away by Carole King,
Oh, deep.
which is a bit of a curve, but I love Carole King. I think it would have been on one of my daily mixes for an unspecified music provider. But yes, it was that. Because if not, it would have been the very aggressive left-wing punk that I listen to while I work out. But instead it was Carole King.
Oh, that was a dicey risk, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
it really
That was a
was.
roll of the dice. What is the most out-of-date thing in your fridge?
I think it was something that we just cooked. So we had some mange tout in the fridge, but we've quite recently moved house, and so we did that thing where you clear the fridge and you're horrified at the things that you find. So like I have some very old jam, but I feel like jam never really goes off because there's so much sugar in it. So it's probably just some slightly on the turn vegetables, because we also just bought a freezer. So all the really screwed up stuff is now in the freezer and is not going to be a problem until we come to move house again and go, this has been in the freezer for 8 years.
I'm glad you clarified that, because I was thinking, seriously, is the best he can do vegetables that you could technically still eat? Like, if they're not mushy and leaking something, then they're
Is
not.
there anything worse than, I threw a cucumber out today that had started to go soft at both ends.
Goody.
Yeah. So if you'd asked me 4 hours ago, it would have been that.
Oh, gross. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? What would you try to do?
Oh, see, this is kind of like the dream career thing, isn't it? This is almost like if you could do anything and have what would I do? I know that if I was a kid, if I could go back and start again, I'd either be a footballer or a pediatric surgeon, which are about as disparate things as you could possibly be. But I would love to have done both of those things. If I knew I couldn't fail, I'd fly. If I knew I couldn't fail, I'd like to fly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
that'd be a terrible one to fail at.
It's high risk, low reward to try it. It really is.
Who would be your ideal teammates out of the Last Kingdom cast for an escape room?
Oh, that's such a good question, because there are some very enthusiastic people who I don't necessarily think would be
any good
at it.
Yeah.
And this is the actors rather than the characters, yeah?
Whichever one, go for it.
If I think actually in both cases it's Alfred or David Dawson, because I think they're both, because Alfred kind of speaks for itself, super, very technically minded, lateral thinker, very wise. David is calm, but David is calm under pressure. David is incredibly consistent, and David is also really intelligent, and I think would be able to piece things together that I couldn't, because I did an escape room once and we failed the whole thing because I couldn't add up 3 numbers at the end. I was awful. Yeah.
I love escape rooms, but my favorite number of people in an escape room is 2. Any more than 2, and if that person's not my friend Hannah, any more than that, and I suck, because I need to speak out loud when I'm working through things.
I press out loud as well.
And she doesn't have to. She does it all in her head. And we did one for my birthday just before the pandemic, and there was like 6 or 8 of us. I sucked. I couldn't do anything. It was my birthday, and I don't think I got a single clue because everyone was talking, and I was like,
too many. It's too many. Like I did it with 3, and it was good.
Yeah.
It was my flatmate at the time and my wife, and that was a good. Apart from the fact I couldn't add up, that was a really good combo.
So who else would you have? So you've got David Dawson, Alfred. I mean, it could just be the 2 of you if you're happy with that.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. You said castmate. Okay. I will go. Well, Ian Hart was also on the list.
Is that as Bianca or as Ian Hart?
No, as Ian, because Ian is no nonsense, and Ian would Ian's grounded. I have a tendency to do like, I'll open everything and I'll turn everything over and I'll be very excited by the idea of finding a clue, but I get disheartened incredibly quickly. So I need so like, for example, Mark would keep my spirits up the whole time because I've never come off the phone with Mark and not felt better.
Yeah, I think he'd be a good leader.
He would be excellent. He would be excellent. Same reason, Eliza. There are few people who I wouldn't want to have on there, but I think we'll limit it to, let's go.
Oh, I kind of want to know.
Let's yeah, who I wouldn't have. Who wouldn't I have? Oh, I'll answer it if I can think of it. I think Arnis or Cavan. I think they'd probably be good at it, but I think me, Arnis, and Cavan would not get out the room. There's no doubt we would not get out the room. Because Arnis, I think, is such a lateral thinker that I think he might miss the point. And Cav would be aware that we weren't really going to get locked in and therefore would really care and would use it as an opportunity to just sort of have a bit of fun. And before we started recording, we were talking about Dungeons and Dragons. I did a little bit of D&D for some of the cast, and Cavan played a character. And normally when people play characters in D&D for the first time, they try to be really cool. And Cavan made the least cool character ever and kept asking, like, he was like, in all battles, he was just like, I think I just get the fear and I run away, which is like the worst, like the most character driven, but least useful thing you can do. And so I feel like Cav would be like that in an escape room. Is that the longest answer you've ever had to a quick start question?
I love it though. It's brilliant. We've just got so much flavor from you. It's fantastic. So we've got two questions we like to ask all our guests because of the interesting replies we have. One of them is, if you could recast any film using just the Muppets and one human actor, what film and what actor?
Oh, wow.
I know, we do hard hitting shit, don't we?
Oh, wow. Just the Muppets and one human actor. Okay, because I had an idea, but then I'm not good. But then it's right because it's not right. I was going to say Saving Private Ryan, but Private Ryan is played by Kermit the Frog, because I think it would be funny to see them go through all those things and then there's a Muppet that they've been trying to save. But that's the opposite of the question. So what would I like to see?
But that's what Mark said, actually. So you're thinking along the same lines as Mark. He said it'd be really dramatic and sad to see the Muppets die on the battlefield.
Yeah, it would be really. Yeah, it would be a Muppet girl doing that thing with the mama. What film would I have? Can I have Lord of the Rings with them all played by Muppets, apart from still Viggo Mortensen playing Aragorn? Because I just think he's one of my favorite actors in the world, and I think what he does tonally is so perfect for the genre and for the character. I'd love to see if it still worked, despite everything being against him.
Of course it would, because like the Hobbits are literally like Muppets anyway, aren't they?
Of course it would. Yeah, that would work really, really well.
Or Elijah Wood's like, yes, I'm pretty much like a
Muppet. Yeah.
If Elijah ever watches this, I'm really sorry. I didn't say which Muppet though. I could have picked one of the cool ones.
Yeah, absolutely, and you would have been right to. Most unbelievable eyes in film, Elijah Wood.
Very true. And the last one is, realistically, how long do you think you would survive in a zombie apocalypse?
See, this is where the ego kicks in, because I like to think I'd do all right. I think my problem would be, I couldn't leave someone behind. I think, obviously you never know, maybe this is just I idealized version of myself, but like I've never been in a fight ever, but I have stopped fights, because if I see people fighting, I tend to jump in the middle, which is a really bad idea because I'm very small, but I can't not. So I think I could run and hide, but I think if I saw something happening, I'd be like, I have to step in. And then I think I would become a zombie very early doors. So if I made it, depending on how quickly the zombies took over, if I made it,
like stabbing zombies in the head or with weapons.
If I made it 48 hours, I'd be very pleased. Realistically. But what do people say? People are like, yeah, I'd be fine because I'm quite good at stunts. Like, no, not when there's an actual horde of zombies coming at you who can smell your brains.
Oh,
Like,
Mark said he would not last very long, and he drives a pussy car that you could literally lift up and roll over. So.
oh yeah, mine would be the same. There was this program over here for a while, which was like, how far can you get away from the authorities, and can you be hunted? Can you be tracked down? And I really like the idea of doing something like that. Like, I've already got my plan of what I do.
Ooh,
I can't tell you in case I ever get to do it.
They do have celebrity versions, so put your name forward.
I don't think my profile is enough to get me on Celebrity Hunted. They had Boris Johnson's dad on there. I don't think we don't have much crossover, Boris Johnson's dad and I.
They have people from like X on the Beach, and let's be honest, talentless hacks. So
well, there we go. I mean, you said it, not me.
Definitely. Definitely. Let's get you on there. Can I be your teammate though?
Yeah, sure.
No, she would drag you down in a heartbeat. She would be like on social media. They'd be pinging her like that.
Say that.
No. Just, I love you, Keira, but I'm just saying, I would not take it if I was running.
First of all, you don't take your phone because they could track you. Duh. That's running away 101.
Yeah.
And then, I'm good at wilderness stuff.
Yeah.
I could totally survive in the woods. And
my plan is no wilderness, but anyway, we'll talk when we're on the show together.
Oh, okay. That's great then. If I get a comfy bed, I'm definitely in.
Yeah, we're all good. Don't you worry about it.
Yes, sorted. Thank you very much, Harry, for answering my ridiculous questions. You have been an absolute delight.
Very much. I
will pass you on to the only slightly more serious Ashley, where she will pick your brains a bit further.
Yes, my questions are not as cheeky, but we like to start off with, where are you from and how did you get into acting?
So I grew up in a town called Dorking, which is about half an hour south of the southern suburbs of London, about less than an hour from the centre of London. And the way I got my start was a very unusual one. So I didn't train, I didn't have any formal training. I've never had a formal sort of institutional acting lesson. I did lots of youth theatre and local stuff, but beyond that, nothing. So there was a sort of Saturday morning stand here and sing the Munchkin song from The Wizard of Oz, sort of kids' little local theatre group in a scout hut in a village outside the relatively small town where I grew up. And I went to that, and then 10, 11 years later, the two ladies who ran that bought an agency. It was a local agency that again operated out of this small village near the relatively small town where I grew up. And they were predominantly a kids agency, but they had some adult clients. I think, although I'm not sure about this, I think Tom Felton was with them at one point, who played Draco Malfoy. I don't know if Keira Knightley was with them, but they were the kind of names that swirled around, that there had been child actors who had sort of had a stop at that agency. And they came to see me in a production of Titus Andronicus in a hut out the back of the local sports centre. And I was playing a character called Chiron in that, who is like a horrible dismembering rapist. And they said, would you be interested in coming and auditioning for us with a view to signing for us? And I was 16, I think I was 16, just about to turn 17. And it turned out that actually, because I'd done quite a lot of youth theatre locally, I don't think I've talked about this before, but they had approached my parents when I was much younger and said, we want to put him up for Gavroche in Les Mis and Chip in Beauty and the Beast on the West End. And my parents said, absolutely not. If he wants to do that when he's older, he can do it. But we want him to be a kid. We don't want him to have the pressure of having to earn money and being in a professional world. We don't think that's a good move for him. But anyway, at 16, I knew I wanted to be an actor. And I said, look, I want to do this. And they were incredibly supportive. My parents have always been incredibly supportive. And so I went along to the audition. They signed me. I was in my last year of A-levels over here, so I think that's high school, but I'm never really sure how it stacks up. So I was 16, 17, and I got a job in a, thank God, unaired Nickelodeon pilot. which briefly surfaced on YouTube and then mercifully was taken down because I was so bad in it. I was so bad in it. And then did a little BBC. There was a BBC drama that I ended up getting a sort of prominent role in. I did a little radio play with Tom Hiddleston, although I didn't really know who he was, and we only met very briefly at a read through. And then I was like, I'm going to go to drama school. So I finished my A levels. I was 17. I was going to apply for drama school, and in the youth theatre, all the adults that I knew were like, don't apply for drama school yet. I was 17 and I looked like 13 or 14. I looked really young. They said, you just won't get in. So go away, live for a bit, have a gap year or a couple of gap years, and go back with some, go back when you're 18 or when you're 19 and then apply, and you've got a much better chance of getting in. So I was like, okay. So I got a job working at the police centre, hoovering offices and then serving breakfasts. And then I got an audition for a musical called Spring Awakening. And Spring Awakening was this show that did really, really well on Broadway, won a bunch of Tonys. And then they decided they wanted to bring it over to the UK with an entirely British cast. And they wanted to cast complete unknowns. And obviously I fell into that category. And the agent that I was with, which again was just the people who used to teach me Saturday morning drama, they had enough of a reputation that the casting director came down from London and saw just their clients for a day. And so me and my friends Luke and Ed auditioned for them. Ed ended up being in the show with me, and Luke is now playing Moses in Prince of Egypt on the West End, and he was last 3 to play the lead. And so, like, just peculiarly, we all, like, so in the most recent show we'd done, I'd been Enjolras, Luke had been Marius, and Ed had been Javert. And then at school, I'd been Judas and Jesus Christ Superstar, and Ed had been Pilate. Like, we were properly close, the three of us. It was amazing. It was a really amazing experience. And we were gutted when Luke didn't get it, but Luke's doing great now, which is really cool. But yeah, so that's how I got into it. And I kept thinking, well, after this job, I'll stop and I'll go to drama school. And then after Spring Awakening, we transferred to the West End, and we like closed after about 8 weeks on the West End really fast, which was a shame. But the show did really well. And for a little while, it was like the best shop window you could be in. And then I got a play called Punk Rock by a writer called Simon Stevens, who at that point was just kind of becoming what he is now, which is kind of one of the most influential and respected writers in London and in the UK in terms of new writing for stage. And then that was a great thing. And then I just kept moving from job to job. And that didn't really stop for about 6 years. I wasn't really out of work for about 6 years, which is crazy, until I was about 24. And then I had 3 months out of work, and then I got The Last Kingdom. So that was it, really.
Was it all through with the same agent, or did you move agents?
I moved agents after Spring Awakening. I signed with Curtis Brown, which was my London agent. And I say that as if I have another one. I only have one agent. And the assistant, I was signed by the assistant, or with a view by the assistant, called Lara. And Lara then became the associate. And then my original agent retired, and Lara looked after me. So one person from when I was 18 till now, which has been really cool because we've kind of grown together. It's been really great. She's amazing.
Awesome. And so you said that you had a job after a job after a job. Was it mostly theater jobs, or did you kind of do theater and film?
I lived a bit of a charmed life, really, because I did 18 months or so just in new writing, in really great theatres in London. And I don't say this to be like, oh my God, look at me, but I just say this to, I was immensely fortunate. I was in the right place at the right time, and I had a face that fit. And I worked with the right people at the right time who kept making more work. So I worked at the same theatres, I worked with the same directors as they kind of put their stamp on things. And I did about 18 months in new writing. And then my agent said to me, we would like to get you some screen. And then they just did. So they got me this job called Eric and Ernie, which was a biopic of Morecambe and Wise, who were a kind of very famous comedy double act over in the UK. And it was their origin kind of story, if you like. And then straight after that, I shot my first feature, which was a really interesting film, which I really wish had done better, because I think it was really cool. It was called Unconditional, or maybe it's called Unconditional Love. I don't know what it's called anymore. Originally, it was called Break the Fall when I worked on it, which is a much better title. But it was about a boy who, or a young man who has a relationship with a a loan shark, and they kind of get into, they're sort of two young guys who are just enjoying each other's company, and then the loan shark starts to kind of encourage him to cross-dress and to take on the identity of his own sister. He has a twin sister, and it's a sort of psychosexual drama about gender identity and about love and about belonging. It was really, really cool. Really loved it. I was really proud of it. And we shot that for like no money in a load of condemned tower blocks in Newcastle, when no one was living there because they were going to get demolished 2 months after we finished. And then from then on, I was able for the next 3-4 years or so to kind of go screen stage. Started getting, like, I did a multi-series thing. Like the first time I did more than one series of something was a show called Prisoners' Wives, which again was called Bound when I started working on it, which I still think is a better title as a recurring theme. And I was able to kind of pepper each kind of, sort of stagger them and do a lot of both. But then as soon as I started Last Kingdom, then I kind of got known. I got known, but I was more acknowledged as a screen actor. And from that point on, it actually became kind of harder to get stage work. But so screen from then on, really, from about 2014 onwards.
And did you find it difficult going from stage acting to screen acting when you were going back and forth between those jobs?
I think the thing that I didn't say it at the time, but the thing that I'm kind of thinking now, particularly because with the teaching, you kind of start looking at work in a completely different way, in the way in which people work. And I say that, the fire at the heart of a character burns just as hot on stage or on screen, but on stage the flames are just visible from further away. That's all you're trying to do. So I believe that inherently it's the same emotional, psychological processes that go into creating a character. It's just about understanding the scale of camera versus stage. And I think there were times when casting directors had said to me, well done on that audition, because when we brought you in for something else, you were in the middle of a play and it was too big. And I kind of learned through stuff like that. That was kind of useful notes to get. But I'm aware of finding it difficult. I also, the kind of theatres I was working in, I did a couple of plays at a theatre called the Royal Exchange in Manchester, which is my favourite theatre I say in the world. I haven't been to theatres all over the world, but it's the favourite theatre I've ever been to or seen anything at, and certainly the favourite theatre I've ever worked in, where it's in the round, so it's 700 seats, but you're encircled by the audience, and wherever you are, there's no safe space on stage. You can't just turn up and look at the back wall if you're kind of laughing at something. You can't mess about with each other. You are the focal point when the theatre is full for like 150 people all the time, and therefore you give a screen performance on stage to an extent because everything you're doing is being noticed by everybody all the time, which is incredibly exciting. And I did a lot of work at a theatre called the Soho Theatre, which is a really small little venue. So again, everything is you have an opportunity to be very detailed. You're not at the Globe contending with planes going overhead and an open air theatre, or when we were in Spring Awakening, we transferred to the Novello Theatre, which I think is 900 seats, and you're really having to push to the back of that. But by and large, the theatres I worked in were of a size where there was a huge amount of overlap between the two disciplines, and a huge amount of overlap in the way in which I prepped characters and thought about the work. So no, it was never any. I enjoyed the process of doing both. So it was never something I was consciously worried about.
So who were some of your people that inspired you the most, whether they be other actors or family members or along the way, who's inspired you the most?
So there's an actor called Stephen Graham who he's in all kinds of stuff. He was in Boardwalk Empire for years. He's in Line of Duty over here, which is this kind of sensational show that everyone loves, but I haven't seen it. But he was, the thing that I became aware of him in is a film called This Is England, which is about the National Front, which was a kind of violent, racist, sort of neo-Nazi movement in the 1980s, or at least this is when the film's set. And he plays a Nazi in it, a kind of skinhead, really horrible character. But the film in general is absolutely sensational. It's an unbelievable film. And Stephen Graham's performance in it was the most affected at the time I'd ever been by someone's work. And then I discovered he was like 5'5", and I thought, and that's how, you know, short I am. And I was always very aware, you know, even in local theatre, I never played the romantic lead. That was never something that anyone ever asked me to do. And so that was never a part of my identity, kind of how I saw myself or how I saw my work. And so I was aware that that kind of door had been to an extent closed. And you're kind of going, I don't know if I just want to play the quirky, funny sidekick. I don't know if I want to play the sort of brilliant, tortured genius all the time. And then you see this guy with such incredible energy and muscularity to his work, and I just thought he was incredible. And alongside that, it wasn't just showy and flourishy and about kind of how loud can I shout and what awful words can I scream. There was something really really genuinely connected emotionally and psychologically, which I thought was amazing. I mean, I still think Lord of the Rings is like the best thing anyone's ever done. So Viggo Mortensen in that, Ian McKellen in that. And then there were other actors. Genuinely, I used to go and watch David Dawson in things, and saw him in a play called Comedians, saw him in a play called Posh, and was always like, who is that guy? Like, that guy's so good. And I met him very briefly in a bar. And then when we got to the read through, what was lovely actually, it turned out he'd been coming to see plays I'd been in, and we'd been kind of going to see each other's work, which was really, really cool, because I massively admired David long before I worked with him. And then an actor, sorry, that I'd be stunned if any of you guys have heard of, called Andy Sheridan, who is an actor over here from Manchester, who I worked with him, and then I was in a play that he wrote, and on stage, I'd never seen anybody. There was just a way he held himself. There was a way, this idiosyncratic way he delivered lines. He kind of found music in things that didn't seem to have music in it, and he blew me away. And for a long time, I would say, I still think he's probably I don't even know if he's working anymore. Like, we're not in touch anymore, unfortunately. But he was the most underrated actor I ever saw. He was unreal.
Hopefully he's still working.
Hopefully, or if not, maybe he's doing something that makes him happier. Who knows?
Yeah, there we go. With that being said, talking about being happy, what would you consider your best audition? And then what would you say would be your experience of your worst audition?
So my best audition, I remember, you have certain auditions where you read characters and you go, I'm going to get that. And it happened a lot when I first started. And I tended to be right. And then it happened, and it continues to happen, and then you're wrong, which is massively disheartening. In terms of really cool experiences, I auditioned with Rafe Fiennes and oh gosh, I've forgotten her name, and she's such a brilliant actor, and that's really disappointing. She was in The Theory of Everything. She's
Felicity
brilliant.
Jones?
Yes,
Felicity Jones?
Felicity Jones. There was a film called, I think it was called The Other Woman or something like that, or The Invisible Woman. It was about, I think it was about Charles Darwin. Maybe it wasn't. Anyway, it was a biopic of someone. He was directing it. She was going to be in it. And I turned up at this hall, and it was just the three of us. And we auditioned by just doing the scenes together. And that was amazing. And that was really, really cool. And they were both incredibly supportive and lovely, and didn't need to be. And that was really cool. But in terms of kind of where I've gone, you know, you've all been in classes with me, and so I think I've said this all at some point, but all I ever aimed for as an actor, all I ever aimed for when I went into auditions was to walk out and say, broadly speaking, that's what I meant. Like, when I read the script and I had an understanding of it and broke it down, I was like, I feel like I know how this should feel. I feel like I know the headspace and the emotional space, and that's broadly speaking what I meant. And there have been plenty of times where I've come out and felt that. I remember, and maybe, you know, it always seems a bit on the nose when I talk about The Last Kingdom, but I remember getting the script for Aethelwold, because originally I auditioned for Alfred, and my agent called me and lit a bit of a fire under me, because she knew how to press my buttons, and said, I've managed to get you an audition for this thing. they don't think you can do it. And I don't know whether that's true or not, and whether it's true or not is irrelevant, but she knew that the thing to say to me was, they don't think you can do it, because the casting director had cast me in Episodes, which was a comedy, and they said they think you're a comedy actor. So I was like, I'll show you. So I prepped the hell out of Alfred. I worked it so hard, and I knew it so well, and I knew what I wanted to do. And I also knew I wasn't right for it, or at least I wasn't the perfect fit for it. So I went in and I met for it. And I remember the casting assistant saying, that was really good. And not in a horrible, arrogant way, thinking, I know, I worked really hard on that. I know it went well. And then I got the script through they said, it's not going to happen for Alfred, but we've got this other character in mind for you. And I read Aethelwold and I went, I'm going to get that. And I met Nick Murphy, who was the lead director on that show. And I met Chrissy Skins, who was the producer, and Chrissy produced pretty much every episode of the series from when I started to when I finished. Her and David and I all left at the end of season 3, along with many other people. But yeah, and I knew that had gone well. That was incredible. The worst audition I ever had was, well, the worst audition that isn't like a fun story is, there was a film, and I'm not going to say the name of the film or the actor because I think it's a bit kind of, it's just kind of not necessary. But there was a film that was made about a writer I massively admire, and it was a biopic, and it was to play the best friend of this writer. And I went in and I was so excited for it, and I felt like I did really good work, and the casting director was really pleased with me. And then I got a phone call like 2 weeks later saying they absolutely loved you for that film, and they wanted you to do it, but you're too short, and they've cast the lead, and he's like 8-9 inches taller than you, and they just don't think it's going to look right. And that felt really shit, because that, on the one hand, you kind of go, control what you can control, I'm at peace with it. And on the other hand, you go, no, but it matters to me. And whoever you've got, I don't believe it's going to matter to them like it matters to me. And I can't help it. Do you know what I mean? I've been put on a box twice in stuff. Put me on a box. Like, I've got no ego about standing on a box so I can fit in a 2-shot. But then the more fun story was, I was auditioning for a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And it was at a theatre where I had recently got down to the last 2 to play another character, in another play of that season. And it was being directed by a director who had seen my work. We'd been working at another theatre at the same time. It was cast by the people who'd cast me in Spring Awakening. The room was in my favour, completely in my favour. And I was auditioning for Puck. And I knew this director's work, and I thought, I don't want to do the standard version of Puck. He's not the kind of director who has fairies and people going, So I was like, how can I make it interesting? What about Puck? What's led Puck to being in the woods, like alone, seeing things, talking to the air? Everything he does in the play kind of gets undone by the end. It's as if he didn't really exist. And I was like, well, it's either going to be some kind of abuse, like drug abuse, or like family problems. And I was like, oh, well, maybe he's going and living in the woods by himself. Maybe he's an addict. Like, let's explore that. So I found this line when everything's starting to go wrong, where he says something like, now dragons start to split the sky. So I was like, chasing the dragon, that's a heroin reference. I'm going to say that the whole play is his fever dream in between having a hit and needing another one the next day, the whole play. What I didn't realize is what I essentially said is, here's your production. If you want me, the whole thing has to be Puck's heroin fever dream. So anyway, I was like, right, it's a London theatre, everyone's gonna go in like really posh RP. I'd worked a lot in Manchester. I did like a really decent rough Manchester accent. I watched a load of videos on heroin withdrawal. I developed a series of physical tics. I like workshopped it in my room physically, all this stuff, made all these big decisions, and went into the room. Everyone's like when people actually know your name in a room, it's a very different thing. I was like, Harry, how you been? I'm like, I'm great, I'm good. How you feeling? Yeah, I'm excited, I'm looking forward to it. And then the director, who was from Manchester, said, like, we don't need to talk about this. I just want to see what your instincts are. And as soon as he said, I just want to see what your instincts are, I thought, oh shit, this needs context. So I didn't give any. It was in this big hall, and I sort of stood there and started like, no, not hungry, like did this mad version of Puck, insane choices that I made. Like I could justify them all. And I finished the speech and there was this long pause, and the director went, okay, can you explain any of the choices that you've just made? And I went, well, I thought I'd do him as a heroin addict, and kind of got like all sort of British and embarrassed. And at the end, the disappointment in the room was so palpable. And that was in 2012. And none of those people involved in that theatre have ever seen me for anything else ever again. So yeah, so that was my worst ever audition. I think I burnt bridges with 4 people that day.
No, I'm sure it was just they were so bowled over by your brave choices.
Genuinely, one of them retired very soon after that.
They wanted to end on a high. They just couldn't get any deeper, so they thought,
I'm just gonna sign out here. Like I'm good.
Yeah. I think that's me done. Yeah.
That's wow.
You went bold.
Yeah.
I did. You know what? And I made a choice. And I do think that there is a version of that character that I'm interested to see. But what I didn't.
That would be a really cool version. And again, I don't know I haven't seen a whole lot of plays, so this is coming from me. But I think that would be a really neat, interesting take on that. I would watch it.
Do it. Your next AC class, do it.
I totally think it's interesting, but I think what I didn't realize was what I was saying was, if you want me, here is the framework for your entire production. And so that was the mistake. The mistake wasn't the choice. The mistake was not understanding the ramifications of the choice.
So do you feel like you could have auditioned with that kind of version in a different way, where you didn't say, this is kind of how I have to fit into it?
Yeah, I think I could have. He noted me. He redirected me, and he said, forget the accent. And he said, I like the idea I like the idea of the heroin thing. Can you do it that instead of needing a hit in withdrawal, he's just had a hit? And I was like, oh yeah, fine. And actually that is the biggest note in human experience. Like that is the biggest emotional 180 you can possibly do, which is a heroin addict in heroin withdrawal, or a heroin addict having had heroin. And as someone who's never been in heroin withdrawal or had heroin, I did not know how to cope with that note. It probably wasn't a very fair note, actually, because it's the entire gamut of what people are capable of. And I think had I maybe taken that note better, maybe there could have been something in it. But it's really the sort of thing where if someone came to me and said, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? We'll do a play. What do you want to do? I could say, I want to do Puck in Midsummer Night's Dream. Here's how I want to do it. That's the situation in which to make that choice. I should have gone in with a clear, characterful read, and then drip fed those things into a rehearsal process, or into redirection, or into discussion after a less intense initial reading. That's what I should have done.
Well, after that, wonderful.
That's a note for our listeners, though. Hell yeah.
That is. I mean, that's really great advice, because I think, we're always told to be bold and make big choices and all that kind of stuff. But it's also very helpful to understand, I guess, your audience at that moment, and the environment that you're going in, and how to have those great choices, like you said, and then just like feed them in to where this potentially could go, but give them what you're auditioning for too.
Yeah.
But speaking about auditioning and all that, I'm going to pass you over to Heather, who talks about prepping auditions.
Cool.
Yes, and this will be the last section as well. But we just wondered, I guess, like when you're prepping and getting ready to go on stage or film, are there any routines that you go through? Any, I don't want to say, oh my gosh, what's the word for it?
Superstitions.
Yes, thank you. I'm like, what? And I started thinking fairies. I'm like, I don't want to ask if he's got any fairies that he goes through. Yes, superstitions or ways that you prep to get in character.
So I used to have a lot of actual superstitions, which I think is why I knew that you were going there. So I used to warm up to the same 4 songs in the same order. I used to, this was for stage, I used to touch the extremes of the space. I used to inhale and exhale at every single seat. I used to not have my feet, if the doors shut themselves, I couldn't have my feet on the floor in a dressing room when a door shut. If I said something to someone on the first night, I had to say the same thing at the same time. If I touched something, I'd have to touch something at the same time. I have to brush my teeth before I go on stage, and I have to brush my teeth again in the interval. All kinds of stuff like that. And gradually that started to get in the way a little bit. So I had to quite consciously move away from that. What will I do? For screen, less in terms of the immediate preparation of it. I'm not someone who tends to hang out and talk in the morning before set. I tend to take a little bit of time for myself. And I think I will ever so slightly mirror and I don't think I realized I was doing this until I kind of look back on it, but I think I will ever so slightly mirror the social dynamics of my character. So if my character is slightly on the outside, I won't consciously I won't put myself in the middle of things. I won't make sure I won't be on every night out. I won't get too close to everyone. But that didn't really work on The Last Kingdom in the end. And also I think there was a point at which in that show, you have a responsibility as a, if you like, senior member of the company, someone who's been on it for, you know, come season 2, for example, when half the cast are dead and there's a load of new people coming in. I think what's more important than my process is a positive work environment for everybody, which means that we organize dinner on the first night and everyone is invited, and we make sure everyone's added to the WhatsApp group, and we make sure everyone is being supported and hopefully feeling valued by the other actors. But generally speaking, yeah, I would hover on the edge of groups rather than put myself right in the middle of stuff if I'm playing that kind of character. And given that that's the only kind of character I tend to play, I think I do that quite a lot.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you find that you've been typecast in some ways on what characters you are given, and does that bother you to an extent, or are you just kind of like, that's the character I know that I'm going to go for?
I got given what I think is some really, really good advice when I was 18 or 19, which was, it was an older actor, really experienced, been doing it for like 30, 40 years. And he said, do not worry about being a chameleon. You cannot fight the fact people are going to see you in a certain way. Do the work that supports that. Get yourself to the top of the list when they're looking for those characters. That is how you work. And then if there is an opportunity to broaden it, embrace it. But if you try to, you only have so much energy and it can only move in a certain direction. If you spread it 360 degrees, you can only expand so far. However, if you take all your energy and you move in that direction, you have a better chance of making progress. And so at the beginning of my career, it was still kind of in vogue to have potentially gay or openly gay, brilliantly minded, slightly maybe on the autistic spectrum young men in British theatre. That every play had like a magic child like that, and I played a lot of magic children. And it's also the sort of thing now that as a straight man I probably wouldn't get given those parts, or would have to think really carefully about, you know, whether all that sort of stuff. But at the time that wasn't part of the conversation. So I played gay, timid, and slightly autistic, and then I started playing kind of gay, timid, and kind of intelligent, and, as I say, autistic and kind of brilliant people. And then I stopped playing timid quite so much, and I started playing kind of slightly edgy, not particularly nice people in a way you couldn't quite put a finger on. And then that was seemingly what I was doing. And there are times when it's immensely frustrating because you go, hang on, I could do this, but I could spend, like I said, with a romantic lead thing, I have no particular desire to play a romantic lead, but I could write to every casting director in the country and say, I want to play your romantic lead in your next thing. I don't look right. I don't look right. I'm not tall enough, all these sorts of things. It shouldn't be a thing, but it's a thing. And there's only so much time you can kick against a door that is been consistently barricaded. just go to the one that's open, you know. And so once I have an opportunity to, if you have an opportunity to work, take that opportunity to work. That's what I think.
So your character on The Last Kingdom, like, I mean, you did such a good job with him. Like, I despised him because he, I mean, in a way, he did have some likable traits. But when you're going in to play a character that you know will be probably not liked very well, how do you find that motivation to play him and believe in what he believes in? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. And I think I remember when I auditioned for him getting the sides and saying to my wife, I'm so excited about where he could go. And where he could go is, in my head, is actually where he ended up going. So I was always really excited by the prospect of him becoming a genuinely unpleasant, however you want to categorize him, becoming what he became.
Genuine threat, wasn't he? He
Yeah,
went from like
yeah,
a
that was
drunken
it.
fool that no
Yeah.
one really took seriously to, holy shit, he got, spoiler alert, Ragnar killed. Like,
Yes. Yeah, that was the thing. He was always going to be a clown for a bit, and I was really wary of him being a clown, and I kind of fought against him being just a clown. And in terms of how do I get under the skin of him, like I genuinely think he's right. I genuinely, and I'm the only person who thinks this, apart from like one or two hardcore fans who go like, he was justified, not in everything he did, but the germ of, he was the son of the king and he shouldn't have been passed over. And then when he sits there all through season 2 and tries to do all the right things and goes to Dunholm and sits on the Witten and doesn't betray Alfred and manages not to die, manages to claim it, and keeps Uhtred alive, but is with Uhtred during that, he should have been rewarded proportionately. And he wasn't. And at that point, I genuinely think he's been wronged. And I think this is all part of, I gain nothing as an actor from judging my character from the outside. I gain nothing from understanding what other people, it's good to have a sense of what other people are saying about him, but I've got no interest in what other characters think of him. I'm only interested in what he would hear. And I've got no interest in me as Harry bringing my own judgment to the character. I have to find a logic, I have to find a truth and a validity to the choices that he makes, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to do him justice. And so in playing him, I sympathize entirely with him. And I think you'd find a lot of actors would say that, unless you are playing someone who is truly, truly, truly reprehensible. And I don't think he was that. I think the reason that I get quite strong reactions sometimes on social media from people, which can be a bit disconcerting, but I think the reason I get them is because people feel bad because they were rooting for him for a bit, and then they feel betrayed when he screwed up. And I think that was why he worked, because there were points at which you were like, he might be right. So if I was to engage with the idea that he was wrong, I think that would have shattered that for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say you did a great job with that character. And even though the whole time I was like, I just want him dead, when he was finally, spoiler alert, I was like, no, like that's part of the fun entertainment of the show.
Yeah.
So I was a little bummed when you met your demise. I was like,
me too, man, me too.
Yeah,
I think that's a beautiful, I mean, I was, as soon as you said it, I was like writing notes of like, right, that's one of the quotes we're going to use. I gain nothing from judging my character. And that is so good, and that's such good advice for people, because when you're cast as something, you don't get the choice as to what you're cast at. It's not, you want the job, so you have to take your character and find a way to be at peace with them and to be able to play them wholeheartedly without judging them from the outside. And that's such a beautiful quote. So sorry, it reminds me of my pen. I was like, yes, let's get that one before I forget it.
I'm thrilled I made the quote. I'm thrilled I made a quote.
Oh, yeah. You'll have at least 2 or 3. Don't you worry. We'll find in there. So far up to this point in your career, what role do you feel has been the most influential to where you are now?
I mean, obviously Aethelwold is looms over everything else I've done, in terms of what I'm, if people know me, generally speaking, that's what they know me for. Very, very occasionally, I'd be in a bar and someone would be like, were you in 1,000 Stars Explode in the Sky in 2011? You're like, wow, I was in that play in the Lyric Hammersmith about the end of the world. Yes, wow, you're incredible. But generally speaking, the last, on a forget on an artistic level for a moment, on a personal level, like I bought a flat off that show. Like I made some of my best friends off that show. I have I'm getting to teach now because of people I met doing that show, and I'm doing stuff like this. So that's incredibly exciting, and that therefore has got to be like by far the most significant thing I've done. Yeah, I think that in terms of like, it's a funny thing because you kind of go, what did I get to do that really grew and had an arc? And it was Aethelwold. Like that was the thing on screen that I got to do. I'm also really proud of the film that I talked about, Unconditional. And there are a couple of plays that I did early in my career that I'm like, I'd love to be able to go back and see those because they felt great while I was doing them. There was a play called Winterlong, which was written by the actor Andy Sheridan, who I was talking about. And that was the first time I played, if you like, a lead. Like I was on stage for the entirety of the second half. And I was like, obviously in the first half as well, but it was a really substantial role. And that kind of, I think that gave me a lot of confidence. That was the point at which I kind of realized that I wasn't going to go to drama school. And at that point, I think I've been doing it for about 3 years. So that was kind of a little bit of a turning point for me.
Mm-hmm. And before the pandemic hit, did you think that you would ever be teaching acting? Or did it just come about because of the pandemic, or when the pandemic hit, were you like, perfect, I've been wanting to do this?
I had taught a little bit. So I had taught at a couple, like at a drama school. I'd gone in and helped do some workshops on a foundation year at a drama school in the UK. And there's a thing called National Youth Music Theatre. And I'd gone and taught for them, done some Shakespeare for them and some acting through song. And I really loved it. And it kind of nourished me in a way that acting didn't. Acting, acting is amazing. And I love the craft of it, absolutely love the craft of it. I'm not someone who's in love with the acting industry. I'm not someone who's in love with the film industry or the TV industry. But the craft of it, I really love. But the thing about acting is or for me it is at least, it's entirely ego driven. It's about me feeling exceptional, and it's about me doing things for me because they make me feel good. And teaching is about being in service of another person. And I find that incredibly, selfishly, actually, I find that incredibly rewarding. I enjoy not being the most important person in the room, and I enjoy my role being to support someone in their own growth. I feel like that's a more lasting contentment that I get. So I was incredibly nervous when Mark asked me to do something because I felt hugely unprepared, but I have absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. It's really, it was something that I kind of, when I was much younger, I kind of liked the idea of teaching. And so, yeah, it's been amazing, actually. I've properly loved it.
Well, you may have felt like you were unprepared. I think I was in your first class, and I've got to say, you were like, I mean, we talked about it, like you were one of our favorite instructors. Like I felt like I learned so much out of that one class I took, seriously. So
thank you. That's really lovely to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. So for all of you guys listening, his next class, I think the next one that starts June 13th is booked up now, right? It's full. Yeah. And I'm not sure when this one will come out, but I'm sure you're going to do more classes later.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is, at least from my end, that some of the classes that I'm doing with the class I'm doing with Martin, hopefully that class will be repeated, which is self-taping. And there's a class that I do with Adam, which is about sort of intense stage and screen. And then we're starting a new thing, which is scene study, which is essentially we take a play and we work the whole thing through, and we do a play reading at the end, like a rehearsed reading to kind of simulate a rehearsal environment. It's that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's going to be lots. I'm able to push it now in a way that I wasn't before, which I'm really excited about. So I'm able to actually start making courses with people rather than someone else making a course, me being like, yeah, I'll do it. Like I'll do half of that if you want. So that's been really, really cool.
That's awesome. So if you guys go to theactorscommunity.org, you can jump on the mailing list. And then when new classes are announced, you won't get left out.
Do it.
Well, is there anything we've not touched on that you want to talk about, or something that you wanted to say that maybe didn't fit in earlier in the podcast?
I can think of something that has been mentioned previously that we found out the other day that we didn't ask you, but it's somebody apparently knows the entire score of Les Mis, including songs.
Yeah. I believe. I mean, I wouldn't want to put it to the test now, but I'm pretty sure that I can get at least 25 minutes in before I make a mistake, which would mean that we'd managed to get through that. But I wanted to become an actor because I couldn't sleep one night. I was like, I don't know what I was, 5 or 6. And I came downstairs and my mum and dad were watching the 20th anniversary concert of Les Miserables from the Royal Albert Hall. And it had like Michael Bull and Colm Wilkinson and Philip Quast and Ruthie Henschel and Lea Salonga. And we videotaped it, and I watched it every day. And I think I first saw it when I was 7 in the West End. And like for my birthday, I would go and see Les Mis. And it was all I wanted to do. All I wanted to do was be Enjolras in Les Mis. And then all I wanted to do was be Javert in Les Mis. And it's what we listen to on long car journeys. We do the whole thing. And if we don't have it in the car, I have now got in the habit where I will say, can I do Les Mis? And my wife will say yes. And then she will go on her phone while I start at the beginning and try to sing the entire score of Les Mis.
Oh my God, I feel I want to see and be part of this so badly.
Trip. It's a real trip.
Class idea.
Harry McEntire sings Les Mis.
Yes. I mean,
My
I've
gosh.
never heard you sing. Can you actually sing?
Well, I mean, I can. I haven't done it for a long time, but I started in musicals. So I wanted to be a musical theatre actor. And then I was in a musical. And I went, I actually don't think this is going to, I don't think this is right for me, because my experience of doing musicals, and it was a kind of, it was an American transfer. So, and I want to point out, I loved it. It was so incredible. But they would say, okay, this scene, you're going to come and you're going to sit here on this line, you're going to go, on this line, you're going to go, and there was no kind of a particular opportunity to find yourself in it. But I just turned 18. I think my second recall was the day after my 18th birthday. And it was like doing youth theatre. In youth theatre, you weren't asked to do anything other than this is where you walk on, then you do your singing, then you do your scene, and then you walk off. Like, so I was like, okay, I can do that, I can do. But we closed 10 months early, and I was kind of ready for us to close. Because I'm not great at doing the same thing every night. When I did the season at the RSC, it was great, but one of the plays I had like one line in, and we did that show like 100 times. And I kind of need to be a bit more stimulated than that. And I remember sitting around the table for my first play. It's a play called Punk Rock. And it was day one, you read the script. Like I'd done what I did at youth theatre. I turned up and I knew the character completely off book on day one of rehearsals, because I didn't realize that wasn't what you did. So we sit down and we're reading the play, and the director, an incredible director called Sarah Franken, like the just this unbelievable director, said to me about my character, Harry, what do you think? And I thought, fuck, I didn't know I was supposed to think anything. Like I didn't know that was my job. I thought my job was that you'd say louder, quieter, faster, slower, or say it like this, and I just do that. So anyway, musicals. That's what we were talking about. Musicals. So yes, the answer to your question is yes, I can sing. There we go.
Not gonna lie, I was kind of hoping you'd be like, no, I'm tone deaf. It makes a horrendous car journey. But she's married to me, so she's got to let me do it.
She really does have to let me at this point. Yeah.
What 3 words would you use to describe your career or your path so far? And the words can be totally independent, or you can make a phrase, or you can use more than 3. Totally up to you. And then what is that one piece of advice you would give to people just starting out in this business, or you wish someone had given to you when you were starting out?
So the 3 words about my own career I find really difficult, because I I have like a complex relationship with my own career, and I have a complex relationship with the industry, and trying to distill it into 3 words doesn't, in my head, I can't do it justice. But the 3 words I would give to other people are: don't look sideways. Because I think there is a huge amount of the comparison steals joy from you. And if you cannot be at peace with your career, or at least have some kind of peace with your process and where you're at, I feel like it's a very tricky place to be in. So I talked about it a little bit on social media, but I went through a period, I think I went through a period of undiagnosed depression for probably 3 or 4 years. And I definitely should have gone and seen someone, and I definitely should have taken steps before, but I didn't really recognize what it was. And I didn't really recognize patterns. And for me, mental health was like physical health. So for example, if I have a week where I'm in bed for like 4 days and then I'm fine for 3, well, I just had a bad few days. Because if you break your leg, it's broken for 6 weeks or whatever it is. It's not fixed for a week in the middle and then broken for a couple of days and then fixed for a day and then broken. So I saw it as a series of isolated incidents of, oh, I'm just keep having a little bit of a bad time. I keep having a bit of a bad time. And then gradually the good times got fewer and farer in between. And the times that it was difficult got more pronounced and more profound. And I was fortunate that I have an incredibly supportive wife and family who have always we've always had a dialogue about mental health. And therefore that was something that I, as hard as it was for me to admit I needed help, could say I need help. And then they helped me get the professional help that I actually needed, because they are not therapists, they are not doctors. It didn't feel right for me to say, you now need to take me through my recovery. That needed to be outsourced to people who knew what they were doing. But I realized that a lot of my depression and a lot of the things that had made me feel unwell some of them had been as a result of the way I was looking at the industry. And I think all of my validation was coming from external sources. I was only good when other people said I was good. And I was only enough when other people said I was enough. And all the time in that 6-year period I talked about, where I'm going from job to job to job to job to job, you feel amazing, because the world is telling you that you're exceptional. And the world is telling you, the industry is telling you that you are a good person, and that you're worth a career, and that you're worth working with, and that you have something to give to the world artistically. And if you believe that wholeheartedly, that what the industry is telling you is true, then you believe wholeheartedly when the industry stops telling you that is also true. You start believing that you are worthless, that you cannot contribute, that you are not benefiting anybody. And the process of my recovery from that, and actually I feel very well now, and I felt very well for a couple of years, but the process of recovery from that was about me realizing that judging myself based on other people's expectations and taking validation externally and looking sideways at other people and saying they're doing that and I should be doing that, and people are telling me this and I should be doing this, that was not a pathway to any kind of happiness or contentment. And instead what I had to do was I do a lot of work on myself and understand my own priorities and start to try. And it's the hardest thing, and it's an ongoing journey for everybody, I think, to have a version of to have a part of myself that is separate from my work, and to have my existence as a human being be a completely different thing from my existence as an actor. And therefore, if I'm not getting work, it doesn't mean I'm not worth being a person. And I can still be a good husband and a good son and a good friend and a good brother. I can still be all of those things. And ultimately, those are the things that are going to matter. And if I'm looking sideways and looking at what other people have and what I feel like I ought to have, and I should have, and we get into ideas of entitlement. It just was not a healthy way for me to live. So the other three words, I suppose, for this is control the controllables. Control the things that you can control. I cannot control whether or not I get a job. I can control what my headshots look like. I can't control whether or not a casting director employs me. I can control whether or not I send them an email. I can't control whether or not I get an audition for theatre. I can control whether or not I know how to break down a script for theatre. And therefore, at the end of a process, which is subjective and down to other people's opinions, when it doesn't go my way, I can go, I controlled every bit of that I could. I took every positive step I could, and it's out of my hands. And therefore, I did enough, I am enough, and the rest is up to the whims of a person who has no idea whether I'm right or wrong for it. They've just gone with their feelings. So that is my advice. So yeah, so in terms of then trying to, if I don't think I can distill that, because that's been the journey of my career. That whole thing has been the journey of my career. And so I don't feel like I can distill that down into 3 words, because it would be clunky for me trying to kind of figure out what they'd be. And I'd start trying to be impressive and clever and articulate. And that's not what this is for. So I'd rather be open about it and say that it was complex than try and tie it up neatly.
Well, we appreciate you sharing that with us. Like you said, it's important because I think a lot of people think they're the only ones, or maybe they haven't quite recognized what it is, or they're ashamed or worried. And it's good to hear other people be open and share that outwardly.
Totally. And there are people who will look at me and quite understandably, from my point of view, go, how can you with your career have depression? Like, you were working all the time, you were doing this thing, and then people who we hear who come out of huge shows and go into rehab, people are like, how can they be struggling when everything they've had? Someone used to say, you always want 20% more. Like, wherever you're at, you're never going to be satisfied, because you're looking sideways and you're looking at what the person next to you has and that person who's ahead of you. And in the pantheon of actors, I sit somewhere in the middle. Like, I've got a lovely career. I've worked with lovely people. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not a millionaire or anything near it. I have to do all kinds of work to make ends meet. I've been painting houses. Like, I'll do anything I can to like make sure that we can pay the mortgage and all that sort of stuff. And what was my point? And my point is, it is all these are always relative to where you are. Like, I think everyone has these. And so if someone like me who is kind of doing okay, I hope that gives permission for people to acknowledge that they might not be doing okay. Although even that, although even that makes me feel like I'm being like, and if I can.
No, not at all. And I mean, I love the idea of the don't look sideways anyway, because that's so true for life in general, especially this world we live in social media, where everyone puts like the good stuff on Instagram and stuff like that, and no one puts up the shit. And you know, some of us do, but it's a really good motto for everybody: is don't look sideways, stay in your lane, look at what you've got, be grateful of what you've got, because most of the time people are bullshitting about what they've got anyway. Never know what anyone's fighting behind closed doors. But also, this industry as a whole very much drags in or appeals to people pleasers and people who require validation from an external source. And so people listening to this there'll be a higher percentage of people listening to this go, I get it, than if they were listening to a sporting podcast. So it's so beautiful that you've been so honest and open about it, because I don't think you realize how many people that's going to help. Someone is going to listen to this and go, fuck, that my lows have been more frequent. Maybe I should, be looking into this. And so as you were talking, I was thinking, girls, we've had our golden moment. We have it in most of our podcasts where you get that moment and you go, that's going to change somebody. And that was it. So thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable with that. That was beautiful.
Oh, well, thank you. Good. I hope so.
This is why we started doing this podcast, is because we wanted to show people everybody's journey and the good, bad, and ugly of their journey in the entertainment industry. And, you know, for people that came from a small town, that's why I always ask where people are from. It's because, you know, when I wanted to be an actor when I was younger. And then I was like, I'm from Chester, South Carolina. Like, there's no way I can be an actress. There wasn't like plays, there wasn't acting school. Like, well, you know, we found one that was like an hour and a half away. My dad used to drive me there on Saturdays. And so, you know, I was like, I'm never going to do it. So I love asking that question because you can come from anywhere and get to where you are. And I know you're like, I'm not a celebrity, but you have made it in terms you work knowledgeable, people respect you. Um, you know, not only just on a TV and theater, but you're teaching, like you're awe-inspiring. And I'm not just saying that because I'm your student, but you really
Don't get grades, Ashley.
Fuck up.
I know.
Free one-on-ones for life.
But you are. And I just think that's why we're so appreciative of every single person that comes on here, because you do it for free. This is your time. And we just appreciate you. Like, because hopefully you'll inspire someone that's listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for asking me to be on it, because, you know, it's a really cool thing. And I love a podcast. I love a podcast.
Podcast. I know. I started listening to Dead Eyes because of you.
Oh, Dead Eyes is so good. If you haven't listened to Dead Eyes,
Yeah.
it's the most accurate representation I've ever found of being in the acting industry. Have you told the others about it, Ash? Do they know what it's about?
I think I'm pretty sure.
I remember hearing it, and I put it
Yeah,
on
you told
like,
us about
my
it in
list.
class before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
things to do when I don't have to teach.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. It's like all the things if anyone's like, there's a disparity between the public understanding of, or public imagination really, of what a career in acting is like and the reality of what it is. That podcast is the reality of what it is. It's so good.
Yeah. I like any of my actor friends or anybody, I'm like, you've got to listen to this podcast. You know, after I promote ours, I'm like, this one's a good one too. You should go check it
The
out.
silver medal podcast is Dead Eyes. That's what we're getting at.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. Harry, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time and your wisdom. And hopefully maybe in another year or so, we can do one in person.
That would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Finally get to meet everything. So yeah, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.